Alright, 3452 solicitation provision contract law, Department of Education acquisition regulation. 3452 text and provisional clauses 271 contractor office of the representative of the prescribed 3401 604 7 the insure of the clause of the substantial same with the contractor office of the representative of the 2011 the contractor office of the representative of the responsible for the technical aspect of the technical liaison of the contract with the other responsible for the specific of the contract reachable for the included with the inspection of the deliverable with the included report of the recommendation acceptance rejection of the contractor office of the contracting officer of the representative is not authorized to make for the commitment otherwise for the obligated with the government for the authorized any change with the effect of the contract prior to the term of the condition of any of the contract required for the changes shall be submitted with the writing of the director with the contracting officer with the contracting officer of the representative with no such change for the shall be made with a written authorization for the contract officer of the contract officer of the representative with the name and the contact information for the contract officer of the representative movie chain with the government at any time with the notification chain with include with the name of the address of the contract officer of the representative will provide with the contract with the by contracting officer writing definitions of Department of Education with the prescribed in 3402 with the 201 inch of the following call with the solicitation provision contract with the call with the 5 hours 52 202 1 required with the Department of Definition of the Education March 2011 and the FARS over the definition of the FAR over the 202 101 amended with the containment of the Education with the Department of Acquisition Regulation 3402 with the 101 the Education of the Department of Acquisition Regulation available to the Internet with the EdTech Policy Funding Reg C Library Edar HEML and 35247 the record of management with the described in 3404 with the 7th with the intro of the following call with the record management October 2023 applicability of the clause applicable with the contract with the subcontract with the receiver, the creative of the work with the otherwise handle with the federal record with the defined with the paragraph with the clause with the meaning of which of the record exhibit the definition of the record of defined Title 40 U.S. Standard Code 3301 means of the record information called with the form of the character of the name received with the Department of the Federal Law with the connection with the transaction public business with the pursuit for the purpose of the reservation with the Department were litigated except for the estimate of the organization function with the policy with the decision with the perceive of the operation of their activity with the government cover the information on the value of the data in the lot then. Record of the inventory used over the call of the meaning of the describe of the listing of each of the federal record. Series of the system of the contractor created for the receipt of the maintain for the performance of the contract for the department of the care for the indication of the location for the pretend for the custodian volume of the other pretend tab of the requirement the contractor shall comply with all applicable record of the law with the regulation of the National Archive with the records of the Ministry of the records of the policy include with the records act with the Title 40 U.S. 44 U.S. Standard Code Chapter 21, 29, 31, and 33 National Archive of the record administrative of the regulation Title 36 with the chapter of 12 subchapter B with include with the Title 36 of the CFR 1236 with those filed with the associated with the safeguarding with the federal records with the Privacy Act of 19 with the wars amended with these law with the regulation policy with include with the appropriate preservation path of the record with the codes with the form of the character with the move with the transmission with the date with the true of the completion include with the Title 36 with the 12 22 with the 32 with the all with the data created with the U of the government delivered their failing under the legal control with the U of the government federal record with the subject provision Title 44 U.S. Standard Code Chapter 21, 29, 31, and 33 of the Freedom of Information Act is amended with the Title 5 U.S. Code 55 2 Privacy Act must be amended with the schedule for the disposition permitted with the federal statute with the regulation according to the Title 36 CFR 12 with the contract maintained with the management of the federal records created with the government use granted with the term of the form of the contract and approved and delivered under the legal counsel of the U.S. government according to the federal law with the electronic federal records to share the media data specified with the delivery under the contract with being accompanied with sufficient technical documentation. Physicists oversee the understanding the contractor should provide for the records of the inventory of the contracting officer, the representative of the contracting officer within 60 business days after the contractor of the order award. Perform a review of the record of the inventory with the accuracy accept with the reject of the records inventory with the 60 business days after the receipt of the contractor receives, maintains federal record with the series of the system with the not include the record inventory of the contractor shall not for the contract with the other representative of the contracting officer for the 5 business days of the contract creation, receive the maintenance of the site of the federal record series of the system, provide with the contracting officer revised records for the inventory of the department required. Review of the record of the inventory active with the accept of the right check with the record of the inventory 60 business days after the receipt of the department will periodically review of the May and sole discretion on update with the record of the inventory to ensure the current accurate and complete with the department to provide with the contract with a copy with the such update with the record of the inventory. U.S. government reserve the right to ensure for the time of contract with the subcontractor policy pursue with the strategy with the ensure for the federal records appropriately maintain with the contractor responsible for preventing alienation authorized to restrict the federal record with the under the contract with the include all of the form mutilation final records of payment not removed with the legal custody of the department to destroy with the except with the performance of the provision of the contract with the Federal Records Act. Willful, unlawful destruction of the damage also alienating of the Federal Records subject to the fine with the penalties imposed with the Title 18 U.S. Standard Code 2701. Contractors report unlawful accidental removal of the defacing, alteration, of the destruction of the Federal Record of the contract office one business day of the contractor shall ensure with the appropriate personnel, with the administrative, with the technical, with the physical, safeguards of the establishment, ensure the security, the confidential, all of the Federal Record of accordance with the contractor applicable law of the contractor shall not remove the material of the U.S. government facilities or systems operative with maintain the U.S. government behalf without the except the prior writing over the issue authorization contractor of the contractor shall not agree with the maintain with the Federal Records can non-public department information not specified the authorized with the contract with the end with the A with the during with the term of the contract with the contractor shall not in one disclose with the Federal Record with a copy thereof with the contain with the information covered in Title 32 CFR 2002 for the Federal Information Act and or sell with any of the Federal Record or copy thereof after the expiration of the termination of the contract with the contractor shall retain with the half the access of the Federal Record with the end with the copy with the contain with the information covered by Title 32 CFR 2002 with the general protection of the public disclosure with the exemption of the Freedom of Information Act with the exemption for the purpose of Freedom of Information Act information exclusively implicated with the exemption for enters of the contract under no circumstance for the contract to destroy the record of the Federal Records except for the conform with the provision of the contract with the Federal Records Act. All contractors employed with the term of the contract with the creative with the work with the otherwise with the Federal Record with the required with the complete with the department to provide with the record with the management training with the contract reasonable with the conforming with the training with the complete with the according with the department policy, including initial training with the annual with the refresher training with the contractor required with the notify with the contract with the contractor relation with subcontract with the testimony with the contract requirement, disclosure information for the documentary with the material with the and or with the Federal Record with the generated with the under with the relating to with the contract with the any with the subcontract with the required with the with the U.S. government with the Department of Guns with the protecting sensitive the priority information classified and control unclassified information. Contractor shall incorporate the substance of the call with the term of the agreement with the include with the paragraph with all the sub contract with the requiring with the disclosure of the subcontract with the information document the material with the and or Federal Record with the generated under relating to the ones with this contract with the required written subcontract with the acknowledgement the same with the violation of subcontract with the provision set forth within the cause will be attributed with the contractor. 204-1 contractor security vetting requirements 2000 October 2023 with the contractor and the subcontractor comply with the Department of Education personal cyber and privacy and security policy with the requirements of the contractor securing vetting requirements. The contractor employee will have the access to the priority service with the department including information control unclassified information defined in Title 32 CFR 2002-4H with the department IT system with the contractors with the operator with the department to have the interface with the department system. Department facilities are space with the performing the duty for the school with the location where the children of the person must undergo with the personal security screening, receive with favorable determination subject with the re-investigation, describe the contract for vetting security requirements, complying with the contract for vetting security requirements as required. Type of security investigation required with the groundsmen for the department with the contract to dictate with the position designation determination signed with the department. All the department contractor position with the testing with the contract with the position risk incentive with the according for the Title 5 Code for regulations. The OPM with the position designated tool with located in a position designated with the determining risk level, the corresponding level of the background investigation required with the contractor should comply with the contractor position designation established by the department following with the contractor employed with the position required with the number of the contractor designated with the risk assessment levels. High risk, moderate risk, and low risk. High performance based contract with the department that have not identified with the labor category of the contract position with the department consider the risk sensitive to the performance of the action with the department of facility with the system whatever the during with the facility to determine the contract position risk level the designation of the contractor employees who will provide servicing of the contract with uniform contract position risk level the designation applicable to the form based with the contract with the contract officer with the overall risk level insert not applicable only U.S. citizens will be eligible for employment with a contract with a low risk and public trust with a moderate risk public trust with a high risk public trust or national security designation approved the waiver the according for the contractor vetting security requirements that was required with the exemption requirement of the paragraph G of the section contractor shall 1 comply with the principal offer the requirements of the personal security screening 2 for the ensure the contractor employed with its high risk of the position then the employee is approved the ensure the contractor employee with the is submitted with the required security with the reinvestigation according for the time frame with the contractor vetting security requirements 4 for the contractor out for the representative of the information personal contact with criminal conduct the financial due with the range of the concern with the suitable for the contractor the employee with whether the contractor employee continue employment with the promote efficiency of the service of the violate with the public trust protective sensitive of the Property Act with the protective of the information control with unclassified information defined in 32 CFR 2002-4H with the unauthorized act with the mischief with the contractor employee with the prevent unauthorized acts with the others with the report instance, or unauthorized action for the ministry of the contractor, officer, representative of the contractor, officer, representative of the removal of the contractor, employee with the contractor with this one business day with the removal of the contract with the 2 business days of the other, remove the occurrence of the events listed on the paragraph B, as far as 52 to 104 of 9 with the person with identification verification contract personnel with the PIV with the ID with the C contracting officer representative with 7 business days of the contracting employee with the department of the contracting officer representative with the end change of the job activity could control the stream of the contractor's employee position need with the increased security access. Failure to comply with any of the personal requirement of the contractor securing pending requirements may result in the termination of the contract involved with the call of the Paperwork Reduction Act. As in March 2011, the Paperwork Reduction Act of 1995 will apply with the contract with the collect the information you with the disco of the federal government. The contractor will collect the information required with the insurance answers identical question with the 10 or more people that don't play with the questionnaire interview with the guy with the other similar device with the contacting collecting information maybe the you with the first obtaining with the clearance for the chief acquisition officer, the chief acquisition officer, the designated Department of Education officer, the management involved with the contract with the contracting officer, representative of the job, the guy with the provision of Title 5 CFR 1320, controlling paperwork burden for the public issue with the secret advice for the Department of Paperwork clearance officer when the proceed with the acquiring of the chief acquisition officer, the office management budget clearance. The contract should obtain with the required clearance with the contract over the representative of the claim of the fund for the make of the public contract with the collection information scope of the paragraph of the with the call for the authority except for the funds with the proceed with the collection of the writing with the contractor officer with the contractor must plan with the 188 day with the chief acquisition over the office management budget clearance with the except for the delay call with the government or the cause beyond the control without the fault with the negligence of the contractor should be considered in accordance with the excusable delay with the default clause of the contract. 2009 Civility Conflict with the interest certification is March in 2011. Contractor subcontractor employed with the consult with the sign with the form and the cause of the certified with the best knowledge believe with the no relevant fact for the circumstance with the good rise with the organization with the person conflict interest or apparent with a conflict of the interest over the organization and with its staff with the contract with the subcontractor employee, so with the discovery of all sorts relevant information with the conflict of the interest with the existence of a reasonable person with the knowledge of the relevant facts, or for the person in question with the impartial will deal with the subcontract with the contract with the employee with the control of the conflicts may arise of the following situation: unequal access to information for the potential of the contract subcontract with the employee with the control of the have access to non-public information through one of the government contract, bias ground rule with the potential of the contract subcontract employee with the control of the heaven work for the government contract for the program the basic control of the ground rule with the government contract implied and projected potential contractor subcontract for the employee with the control of the member with the immediately family spouse parent with the child with the financial with the other interest with the would impair with the appearance with the impairing with the impairment judgment with the evaluation of the program software to provide for the recommendation of the government to provide with the technical assistance and other with the recipient in the federal form of the contract responsibility impaired objective includes but is not limited to the following situation that will cover the reasonable person with the knowledge of the relevant fact of the question of the person objective financial interest with the reasonable foreseeable financial interest connection with the product of the property of service that may be purchased with the educational agent for the person of the organization institution with the core for the implementation any of the program administered by the department. B. The significant connection with the teaching methodologies approach of that may require the encouraging the use of the specific product when the property or service. C. With the significant identification of the physiological points which may be require the acknowledgement encouragement use of the specific curriculum specific product of the property and service. The officer must provide the disclosure of the described above the actual potential for conflict interest with the apparent with the conflict interest with the opinion of the conflict of the potential for the conflict of the apparent with the conflict interest with the impair with the objective. In this case, the actual potential for the conflict of the apparent with the conflict interest with the scope of the department to take it to property actions to eliminate the actual potential for the conflict with the include not limited to the mitigation of the neutralization conflict with the purpose through the source of the meaning for the ensure with the balance of the view with the disclosure with the approach disclaimers, but with the modifying with the work to perform with the void with the retrieve the conflict and club with the determinant performance with the conflict meaning with the reasonable foreseeing with the conflict interest. Contract with the subcontractor employee with the control with the agree with the impair with the directive with the actual with the potential conflict with the nature with the parent with the conflict interest with the discovery with the war with the maid will make a full disclosure with the writing with the contracting officer for the disclosure shall include with the description and action for the contract that they have with the take of the process with the vacant and avoid the mitigate and neutralize actual potential conflict and apparent conflict interest. Remedy the government may terminate with the contract abeyance for the involved with the team with such of the termination for the to avoid with the parents with the conflict interest with the contract with the aware of the potential conflict interest the point where prior to award scope of the actual potential conflict after the award does not discover the misrepresentation of the relevant information contracting over the government may terminate with the contract with the default pursue such other remedies may permit with the law of the contract remedy with the imprisonment of 5 years with the Title 18 U.S. Stand Code 1001 fines up to $5,000 violation Title 31 U.S. Stand Code 3802. Further remedies include the suspension of the Department of the Contract with the federal government of the contract that may require the reimbursement of the Department of the Conflict may incurs arising with the activity conflict of the interest. Examples such as with the cost incurred with the process of the Freedom of Information request of the relay with the conflict of interest. In the case of the remedy, short of the termination, have them apply with the contract or subcontract, employ with the consultant agreement to eliminate the organizational conflict of interest, mitigate with the satisfaction of the contract officer. Contract further agree with the inserts the contract and the consular agreement hereby with the provisions substantial with the language of the clause with the include the specific mention of the potential remedy of the paragraph E. Conflict of interest of the certification officer with the name of the officer hereby certified with the best for the knowledge with no representative of the currently planned interest of the financial contract with the organization otherwise relating with the work with the perform under the contract task over the result of the request of the proposal the number to enter with the number that would create with the actual potential of the conflict with the interest of the apparent with the conflict of the interest include with the conflicts of the interest of their immediate family members, spouse, parents, children that would impinge on the ability to render impartial with the technically sound with the objective of the system with the device to advice or result of them being given an unfair and competitively advantaged cause for the term of the potential conflict meaning with the reasonable foreseeable the conflict into with the other or further certified that it has the will to continue the extra with the due diligence to identify with the remove the mitigation government satisfaction of such conflict and apparent conflict interest off of the name of the RFP contract number the signature of the date title and the date and 71 conflict of interest over the March 2001 contractor subcontractor employed with a consultant with the certified with the best of the knowledge but leave with no relevant fact with the circumstance with the give of the X the organizational personal conflict interest so far as subpart of the 9.5 of the organizational conflict interest paying with the conflict with the interest of the organization A with the staff of the contract with the subcontract with the employee counsel with the discuss the relevant information such as the conflict appear with the existence of the reasonable of the person with the knowledge of the relevant fact with the person with the question with the impartial with the contract subcontract employee with the consultant. Conflicts may also arise with the following situation: unequal access with the information potential with the contract subcontract employee with the consultant with the access with the non-public through the information performance with the government contract with the basic ground rules potential with the contract or subcontractor employee with the consultant with the words with the government contract with the program with the basic stroke with the ground rule with another pro-government contract with the impaired objective with the potential with the contract with the subcontractor with the consultant with the member with the immediately family spouse with the parent child with the financial with the other interest would impair with the given appearance with the impartial with the impairing with the partial with the judgment with the value with the government pro with the authoring advice with the recommendation with the government or with the providing with the technical assistance or other services for the recipient of federal funds as part of the contractor or responsible for the impaired objective that includes but is not limited to the following situations would call for the reasonable person with the knowledge relevant fact with the question of the personal subjectivity financial interest reasonable foreseeable financial with the connection with the property service for the purchase of the educational aid of the person with the organization institution course of the implementing of the program administrative with the department significant connection with the teaching methodologies that merit for the encouraging of the specific product from the property and service significant identification physiological philosophical viewpoints for the requirement to encourage you with the specific curriculum, specific products, and property and service office to provide with the disclosure for the above with the actual with the potential conflict and parent with the conflict interest cover the appendage of the conflict with potential conflict with the parent with the conflict interest would impair with the objective in case of the actual potential with the conflict the parent with the conflict within the scope of the department will take appropriate action to eliminate the threat of the actual potential conflict the parent with the conflict interest include but not limited to mitigating with neutralize the conflict appropriate through such means with the ensuring with the plan to be with the disco of the appropriate disclaimer thereby restricting the modifying with the work performed otherwise to reduce the conflict in this call for the term of the potential conflict reasonable force with the conflict interest with the contract subcontract the employee with the control with the agree with the impair with the objective actual potential conflict interest with the parent with the conflict interest with the discover the afterwards made with the full disclosure of the writing of the contract officer with the disclosure between the description and action with the contractor is taken purpose to intake with the consultant with the contract officer to avoid mitigate and neutralize actual potential conflict with the parent with the conflict of interest. Remedy with the government may terminate with the contract conveying to the whole part and the deemed the termination necessary with the parent with the conflict with the interest of the contract will be aware of the potential conflict interest prior to the war with discover the actual potential conflict of the parent with the conflict interest. Afterward, it does not discover the misrepresent relevant information for the contract enough the government may terminate with the contract with the default with the pursuit with the other remedies as may be permitted with the law with the contract. The remedies include the imprisonment up to 5 years violation, 18 U.S. Standard Code 1001 fines up to $5,000 violation, 31 U.S. Standard Code 3802 with a further remedy with the include the suspension of the department of the contract with the federal government. The contract may also require the reimbursement department over the cost of the department incur with the arising with the activity related with the conflict of the interest. Examples such with the cost of the incur with the process with the freedom of information or with the conflict with interest. Alright, in this case, the remedy short term have been applied with the contract or subcontract employed with the consultant agreement to eliminate the organizational conflict and for the mitigate with the satisfaction with the contracting officer. The contract referred with the agreement with the subcontract with the contracting agreement here under with the form substantial with the language of the call with the specific mention of the potential remedy for the paragraph E. 34 52-215-72, the release of the restricted data March 2011. Offer hereby put into the donor for the regards of the use of the legend set forth in the FARS 52-215-1E with the restricted discover the tab of the government made for the require for the leave the stream of the tab of the contain proof of the response for the growth of the tab over the freedom of information over the government determination of the withhold of the discover the record of the base of the particular circumstance for the involved with the tab of the question whether the data may be exempt from the disclosure of the Freedom of Information Act according to Executive Order 12600 for the into the extent permitted by the law of the government will notify the officer of the release of the restricted data by submitting proposal for the quotient of the response for the solicitation of the canal for the department that may not be able to withhold the deny action of the data for the request for the freedom of information of the government and freedom of information officer shall make the determination officer of the government not liable to disclose the department to determine the disclosure for the freedom of is required by the freedom of information officer acknowledge for the proposal does not result of the contract that remains freedom of information act for officer agree with the government not liable to disclose the unmarked data but the may not disclose the data but the purposes include with the release of the information pursued with the request for the freedom of information act see officer cause from the government reserve for the right to reject any of the proposal subject to the respect of the legend saying differing substances of the one required solicitation for 52-215-1E with the restriction of the disclosure you for the data or with the statement to take exemption for the take paragraph A and B with this provision 34-52-216 7 the additional cost principle August 1987 the bid proposal for the cost of the bid proposal cover the meaning for the cost of the preparing for the bid for the proposal for the application for the potential for the federal for the non-federal grant for the contract for the agreement that include the scientific cost for the data for the need for the support for the bid for the proposal the application for the bid and proposal cost for the current of the accounting period allowable to interact with the cost for the bid and proposal cost for the scoring with the count for the unable to cost for the current period with the hour everything with the organization staff for the price for the tree with the cost for the some of the other methods that may be accepted if they have found with the reasonable and equitable with the bid proposal the cost of the not include the independent research for the development the cost for the pre-acquired awarded cost independent research for the development the cost for the independent research for the development of the research for the development the not strong for the federal for the non-federal for the grant contract for the other agreement the independent research for the department for the allocate for the portion only share for the indirect cost of the same business basis for the allocation for the indirect cost of the sponsor for the research and the development and when the cost of the independent research for the development include the proportion share for the indirect cost unallowable end clause 34-52-216-71 award term October 2013 initial insert for the initial of the contract term of the contract term of the ordering period may exceed and reduce for the base of the contract performance the result of the contract term of the ordering lasts for the release for the insert for the minimum contract for the year for the day for the contract for the maximum the insert for the maximum contract for the year for the day for the contract for the contract performance that will be measured against stay the same with the performance of the monitor for the report of the finding for the board terminating determination of the official or board for the bilateral change that may be made for the board for the term of the land anytime of the day for the agreement cannot be made with the day of the government reserve for the right to make a unilateral changes to the part of the war term period with the contractor submit the rebriefing the result of the evaluation performed the X day for the after the end of the evaluation with the evaluation report shall not see for the top of the page for the must consider for the award terminate term review board and with the termination fits over the evaluation for the contract over the performance during the period of the contract determine the term awarding perform period require the bilateral modifications that reflect the award term review board decision contract determine the ordering period of the 1 year remaining with the operation of the contract or with the feature for the cost of the contract with the award ordering period will not extend beyond with the max but the terms stated in the contract with the award terms have not become with the maybe cancelled after rather than terminated should indeed the with the trip with no longer exist with no equitable adjustment with the contract price for the app with the not same with the proceed with the termination with vacancy the decision made by the award team review board for the termination official with the maybe the unilateral alternative dispute resolution proceed with the utilize of the appropriate end clause 224-70 to release information for the Freedom of Information Act of the March 2011 by entering with the contract with the Department of Education for the contract without regard prior to rated market approval the release of the entire contract with a delay with the modification task over the include with the not limited unit price for the labor rates see with the work performance the work stay with the generator of the contract performance requirement included in some of the performance chain of the quality level of service level of agreement to perform the deliver the work private deliver the performance contract include quality of the performance against the requirement of the chain of the service the level agreement and additional information data off of the related document first provided under the contract proposal portion of the proposal the incorporated reference over the term and condition notice of the valve of the research activities involved with the human subjects 224-71 it's on October 23 applicable regulation with the include of the Department of Education regulation protection of the human subject Title 34 CFR Part 97 of the regulations contractor, subcontractor, engage with the cover, the non-exempt, with the research activity required for the establishment, with the achieve the protection of the human and subsequent addition. Contractor being notified the other entity over the known to the contractor engaged with the cover of research activity with the reform to comply with the regulations. Definition regulation defined with the research and seismic investigation that include with the research, the development, the testing of the design of the development, contribute generalized knowledge of the activity developed with the deliberative with the plan with the described, developed, and contribute the generalized knowledge of the research. With the research includes activity that meet with the definition whether not the conducted under the program considered with the research of the purposes. For example, so as to demonstrate whether the programs include with the research activity with the regulation of the defined with the human subject of living individual with the investigator with the professional student with the conducting the research option of the data with the intervention interaction individual obtain use of the analyze with the generators identify will private information with the definition investigators gathering information for living person through the intervention manipulating subject environment with the research for the mighty occur with the natural new instructional technique is tough with the interaction communication interacting individual occurs in surveys, interview, the identify private information about liberty, that can be the link for the individual, with the identify with the subject of the maybe rebel, extreme with the investigator, the associate with the information, private information includes information about the behavior with the curve of the contact with the individual, reasonably extract with the no observation recording with the taking place with the information, have the provide with specific purpose of the individual, reasonably extract with the made, will not may be public, for example, the school health record exemption 34, 97 with the 104 with the provide examination of the federal policy with the protection of human subject with the research of the activity uninvolved with the human subject one more of the categories set forth in Title 34 CFR 97 104, the D with the F with the research subject with the children exemption of 34 CFR 97 104 DE, research involved with the educational type of the survey procedure with the interview procedure with the observation of public behavior that is modified in Title 34 CFR 97 401 B. Exemption paragraph B of this provision, children research for the Title 34 CFR 97 402 with the D, A with the definement of children as a person with not being attained with legal age with the consent and to the intervention of the procedure involved with the research of the under the applicable law of the jurisdiction which research will conduct in Title 34 CFR 97 401 B. Provides if the research involved with the children is subject to the exemption of 34 CFR 97 104 D2, but it does not apply with the activity in survey, interview, procedure involving children, so with the observation, public behavior of the children, investigate with the participate in activity being observed with the exemption of Title 34 CFR for the 97 104 D2, with the continue to apply with the unmodified title by Title 34 CFR 97 401 B2, with the educational type of the observation, public behavior of the investigator with not participate with the activity being observed. Proposal instruction the author proposed with the breach of the involved with the human subject with the bonus with the part information of the department proposed exempt and non-exempt of the research activity. The officer shall submit the information attachment the technical proposal with no specific limitation with the requirement but for the brief of the point with, for example, the research activities involved with the human subject. The officer shall identify with the exemption and apply with the provided sufficient information allow with the department to determine designated exemption as appropriate non-exempt research activity involving human activity of offer must cover the seventh point with the information provided with the department. The seventh point narrative is usually provided within 2 states left. Human source of the involvement of the character of the describe the character of the surface subject population, including the anticipated names, age, range, health, status, identify the criteria, inclusion of the subpopulation, the rational involvement of the special cases, classes, subject with the touch of the children with disabilities, with disabilities, adults with disability, persons with mental disabilities, pregnant women, and institutionalized individuals, others who are likely to be vulnerable. Source of the materials, identified source of the research material obtained with the about the individual, identified with the living human subject of the force of specimens required with the data. 3. Requirement, recruitment, and with an informed decision, informed consent, with the describe of the plan with the recruitment subject with the consent procedures followed. 4. Potential risk, describe the potential risk, physical, psychological, social, financial, legal, educational, or other. They assess with the likelihood, seriousness of women. They appropriately discover the alternative intervention of the procedure that might be the advantage to the subjects. 5. Protection given the risk of the describe of the procedure with the protecting begins with the minimizing of the potential of this include with the confidential assets like the effectiveness such as the appropriate to discuss the provision and ensuring the necessary medical professional information event of the adverse effects of the subject, also with the appropriate to describe the provisions monitoring data collected to ensure the safety of the objects, important with the knowledge of the game, with the discover the risk of the subject with a reasonable relation with the important with the knowledge of the may be reasonably expect with the result, collaborating sites with the in research that involve the human subject for the place for the collaborating side of the name of the side of the relief to describe that involve the role of the research of the three of the reasonable potential that exists that it need the contact with the research of the involved in the human subject that may be identified with the war of the contractor officer proposal of the consent in the order to define plays on of the stuff of the research of the officer of the describe the circumstance of the nature of the potential of the research involved with the human subject the way of showing with the certification and the code of the regulation the term of the provision of the contract or subcontract within gave with the research activity involved with the human subject of the comply with the requirements that shown with the institutional review board and approve of the set forth in contract clause 34, 52 to 24, 72 research activities involved with human subjects. Contract officer with the right that require with the officer of the or have applied with assurance and provide with the documentation institutional review board approve of the proposed research prior to the board based on Title 34 CFR 97 and 114 with the cooperative research of any institution involved with the cooperative research prior to the covenant of the regulation that involved with more than one institution. From the joint review of the agreement with the rely upon and of the IRB as a single IRB with the relevance of the agreement and research conducted with the United States. Alright, additional information on the regulation related information protection and human research of the Department of Human Protection and Human Subject Research website. Officers from the also contain the following officer for the information regulation protection and human subject for the related project policies, guidelines, protections of the human subject coordinator of the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Finance, Operation, Office of Acquisition, Grant, Risk Management, 400 Maryland Avenue, South Washington, C.C., 2022 with the 4331, or email human subject research of the ed.gov. Alright, we're going to cut the tape there at 3452 2472 research activities involving human subjects. And that's about halfway.